Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Trap Chat Presents Trailblazing Footprints Writing Black History Today. I am so excited, as I always am. I am joined today by an unofficial / official mentor, someone who inspires me, I admire greatly, a native of Columbus, Ohio. I probably got that wrong.
Right,
Okay.
right. Representing
Columbus,
CPA.
Ohio, an HBCU graduate, Wilberforce, shout out. Um, Currently by country. What is it? You just a international, by coastal and by hemisphere.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
The CEO of Kelton Legend LLC and the CEO of Kim Tours Egypt, a talent acquisition superhero, and just the queen of the queendom,
Thank you. Thank you.
Kimberly Jones. Hey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be available to your amazing universe of listeners
Oh.
and subscribers.
Yes. So, Kim, as we always do, we start with your career journey. So, how has your career journey as the CEO and talent acquisition leader within aerospace and technology industries, where we know Black professionals are underrepresented in leadership, how
Mhm.
has that shaped the way you navigate and thrive in challenging professional environments?
Yeah, so I would definitely say my career was not one that I scripted or mapped out at all. Again, come from Columbus, Ohio, Nationwide Insurance Company was the second largest employer in the city. And so when you think about work for the state, work for Nationwide, working for Ohio State University. And so I will say, as a Gen Xer, very easy to accept what was still somewhat the model of graduate, work for a company until you retire. And so that very easy to settle into that. And so after working for Nationwide for 14 years, especially as a recruiter, probably the year before I left, especially being a recruiter, traveling all across the country for a number of recruiting initiatives, it gave me an opportunity to start seeing that there was life outside of my zip code. And so I casually started, just shopping and considering other opportunities. And I just said, you know what, maybe it is time for me to branch out a little. And if I don't like it, I'll just come back. Like this is always, a place for a soft landing. And once I left, I never turned back. And so one of the things I always share with people around just, my career journey, but my leadership journey is not being afraid to take thoughtful risk. And so not foolish risk, but thoughtful risk. But also the importance of relocation. Relocation opened my life and my career up to so much. And so, especially moving across the country solo, a lot of people, have the benefit of a spouse or others in their household to help you get acclimated. I literally have moved across the country by myself. And so that has definitely impacted my journey because all of the experiences, both good or bad, were lessons learned for me and they helped me be smarter along the way. But what I also found myself being able to do is when I would arrive somewhere new, I'm starting to meet new people. People were having conversations about other areas of the country. I had something to offer to those discussions because of those experiences. And I'll give you an example. I am very much a foodie. And so every place I've traveled to or lived in, if someone says, oh, I'm going to such and such a place, I can tell you where to go get good cupcakes, good pizza, good ribs, good pasta, whatever it might be. And so just my life has been so much more full and enriched because of all of the experiences that I've had in a multitude of places.
I love that. And you have had, you got to tell these folks where some of the places that you
Yes,
live.
yes. So I moved from Columbus to Indianapolis, Indianapolis to Denver, Denver to the Washington, D.C. area. I moved from, shout out to DMV,
Yes.
DMV back to Indianapolis, Indianapolis to Cincinnati, and then from Cincinnati out to the West Coast to the Los Angeles area.
Yeah.
As a recruiter, however, I have covered so much of the country, Portland, New Mexico, Dallas and Houston, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. I mentioned Denver, Kansas. Um, I remember being on a lost road in Tennessee looking for directions on some of my days where I was out supporting HBCUs. And so, like, I think about my first trip to Langston University. So you fly into Oklahoma City, get a rental car, and then you take a pretty, interstate, and then off the interstate drive to Langston University in Oklahoma. And so literally being able to experience the country all through work. I think about so many people who travel and they talk about trying to save up money and PTO days. I've been able to travel at the expense of my employers. And so that makes the experiences so much more enjoyable because I didn't have to fund it myself.
That is the blessing. I love that. And I love that you said like getting off a plane and getting a rental car. Cause I recently went to TA week in San Diego, which is obviously East Coast to West Coast. But my first Uber driver and I were talking about how different it was to travel, when we were in the early mid parts of our careers, and I too was able to travel with work and go to some interesting places. And I was like, I was just grateful for the Uber because it was late at night.
Yes.
It was late at night for me, especially. It was 9 o'clock there, so it was pitch black, but to me, it felt like midnight. So I was saying, I was like, it used to be I got off an airplane and I went to the rental car desk and got a rental car. It got my MapQuest directions and figured out how to get where I was going. I was like, but I'm just grateful that we have this. So shout out to Uber, shout out to companies who allow us to not have to navigate these roads by ourselves when we are out here by ourselves.
And if I can just share one quick story.
Absolutely.
One of my trips, I believe it was to Tennessee, again, going to visit an HBCU. There were always taxis, but before, rideshare, became a suitable transportation, you would map out your entire trip. And so got turned around trying to find my destination. And I'm now on a part that's not really the highway. It's kind of just a 2-lane road. And I was like, before I get any more lost, let me just stop at the next place I encounter. So just probably maybe a minute after I kind of say that to myself, there's what appears to be a small gas station, general store, but like very much looked like a log cabin. It reminded me of, I'll tell you, the movie Deliverance. And so I get out my car and I go inside, and in a very naive way, there's a gentleman behind the counter and 2 other gentlemen who are standing on the other side of the counter. And so I simply ask, like, hey, I'm looking for, I can't remember my actual destination and I've gotten myself lost. Can you maybe give me some directions so I can find my way back to the road that I'm supposed to be on? And the gentleman responded and said, we don't have no directions here for you. And as he said it, I then looked at him and I looked at the other 2 gentlemen. And then I realized how much danger I was in at that moment. And I quickly turned around and got in my car. And it was through the grace of God that I was able to eventually just turn around and find my way back. So I'm working for my employer. I'm on my way to an HBCU, but I'm very much a Black woman in a state that identifies with a lot of really toxic, terroristic behavior, specifically for the Black community. And so his response to me was very representative of what happens for Black people in general. And that experience stuck with me. We don't have no directions here for you. And so those, one of the experiences that I will say, again, when you think about things that happen that are good and bad, you learn from every single experience.
Yes, and I'm grateful that you are okay. That is a Black history moment that turned out on the positive side. We are going to shift just a little bit because you talked about travel and I mentioned it. You do run a successful travel company in addition to having a full-time job and a full-time business. It's called Kim Tours Egypt.
Yes.
Can you tell us what inspired you to create Kim Tours Egypt, and how does your approach differ from traditional travel experiences in the region?
Yeah, so I love telling this story because my birthday became a business. In 2017, here in LA, there are a lot of outdoor movie experiences. One is at a cemetery that sounds really crazy, but very much Hollywood in LA, forever Hollywood Cemetery. And so had enjoyed my birthday with some friends. And as we were packing up, I announced to my friends, I'm going to go to Africa, to the continent of Africa for my birthday next year, which would have been 2018. And of course, my friends were like, this girl is crazy. She is always out doing things, much the same way I did again, moved all over the country. When I worked for Raytheon, I actually completed a 6-week deployment to Antarctica, including the South Pole. And so I have continents that I need to see. And so from September till about March, almost every Friday night, I would find myself in a wormhole on YouTube, just consuming videos. And so for two things for me, one, it was to go visit the country of Zimbabwe for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to go swim in Devil's Pool for my birthday. Also, just understanding the history of European colonizers showing up to Zimbabwe, renaming things that already had an indigenous name. I wanted to go and really interact with the people who are really the children of that soil, and not people who came through other tactics. And then the other place to visit was Egypt. And so I had wanted to visit Egypt since I was 6 years old for a couple reasons. One, my father worked for a construction company. I was fascinated by buildings. I'm fascinated by builders. And so a lot of people talk about Silicon Valley as their North Star, or, center of the universe. Egypt will always be the center of intellectual universe for me, because long before we had TI, Texas Instrument calculators or iPhones, ancient Egyptians understood math and physics in a way that people still don't understand math and physics. And so I wanted to go to a place where a entire group of people mastered it in such an impactful way. The other thing that drew my attention to Egypt was just the ornateness and the way that women were adorned in that culture. And being the youngest of 11, I have 9 sisters. I am all things hair, dresses, shoes, jewelry, glam. And so Egypt was that for me. And so I planned my entire trip. I thought it was a little overwhelming. I had reached out to several travel agents. I decided not to partner with any of them because they continued to try to plan the trip they wanted me to have and not what I was asking for. So I took all of my life experiences, my HR experience. I also have a PMP certification. I'm like, this is a project management opportunity. And I planned my entire trip. And so for 13 days, I had the most amazing, life-changing experience. And so when I got back almost immediately, people said, plan my trip for me. And I was a little reluctant at first, but then I embraced it. And so here we are in 2025 with a full calendar of clients that I am helping people have an amazing, safe, enriching cultural experience. And I'll just add one more thing. This year, also hosting for the first time a women's leadership conference in October, combining my HR experience with these travel experiences, helping women understand the lessons in leadership that can be learned from the Egyptian society.
Yes, I love that. That's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to stay there because I know that a lot of people are just as excited as I am, but they may have some financial barriers, or they simply don't enjoy international travel, don't travel well. I'm a person who I say I don't travel well, but I will go after some angst. What are some of the creative ways, and there are many, because I have been a beneficiary of a few of them, that you bring these enriching experiences, the culture, the cuisine, etc., into everyday lives for folks who may have, some financial constraints, or like I said, don't really enjoy the travel experience.
Yes. So if I cannot bring you to Egypt, I will bring Egypt to you. I have had, again, just amazing experiences with indigenous Egyptians, specifically Nubians. And so, if you know, my background, it is the Nubian village that's located in Aswan. And so having an opportunity to meet Nubians who have their own farms, who cultivate spices and essential oils. My bag is always full when I come back because people are messaging me like, hey, I can't go, but can you bring me? I can't go, but if you see. And so cooking spices, I am very much, again, I said, a foodie and a fat girl. I bring back spices for people, hibiscus tea, stuffed spicy curry, kafta spices. Those are some of my favorites. But then also the Nubians in Aswan, the perfume factories. And so some of the scents that I have come to love and enjoy: eucalyptus, frankincense, myrrh, oud. And there are many different varieties of oud, but I believe the Nubians have one of the most sensual, almost intoxicating aromas of oud, to the extent that people are drawn to you when you actually have it on. So I tell people, if you don't have a passport, if you are somewhat of a travel Nubian, you're not sure if you want to go that far that fast, I definitely look for opportunities to bring Egypt back to people.
Yes, she does. And you do need to check out the oils that she brings. I have a stockpile at this point. And I have my certain ones in certain rooms that I make sure I keep. My diffuser stays smelling of Kim scents.
Fantastic.
Yes. Instead of frankincense, Kim scents. So thank you for that. We got to shift again because there's so much to get to when it comes to you. You are very multifaceted. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you're a Wilberforce alumna, which is an HBCU.
Correct.
So can you share how your HBCU was instrumental in instilling a sense of cultural pride, resilience, and community that continues to influence your personal and professional decisions?
Yeah, so a couple things just about the HBCU experience. I want to shift to talk about something that's not just impactful to to Black people in America, but just people in general who have pursued education. Wilberforce's education, first of all, was very affordable. What I paid, for my undergraduate, the entirety of my degree, some people end up spending that amount of money on just 1 year at some, majority universities. And so where I've listened to a lot of my generational peers still lamenting paying off student loans while also now trying to save for their own children, my student loan debt was paid off a long time ago because Wilberforce is just at a price point that made it a lot more affordable. Specific to how that experience really impacted me, we had quite a few instructors who were from African nations, and their sense of expectation and pride is very different. I recall when I worked at Honda. Honda was not too far away from Central State, and Central State and Wilberforce are across the street from each other. And recruiting mechanical engineers from the engineering program. And some of the recruiters mentioned, they went to visit and there were only 3 students in the mechanical engineering program. And their response to me was, at Ohio State, that's not worth the professor's time. That course would have been canceled. And I said, let me explain to you the difference. Black professors understand the importance of creating Black college graduates. Even if there was only 1 student, that class would have still been held because we have to be invested in a very different way and making sure that we are creating Black graduates who also then become Black professionals who then come back and continue to water those seeds. And so the sense of expectation that is created by Black faculty and staff at HBCUs is unsurpassed. And I even saw this as a college recruiter. When we recruited, we had students who were from Inroads and then students who came through Tom Joyner Foundation, United Negro College Fund. Black students at majority universities learn how to survive. Black students at HBCUs learn how to thrive. It creates a completely different personal dynamic when you are cultivated as a Black person in a very different environment. And so I will always go back to a university in a cornfield that also is a site of the Underground Railroad, because there were enslaved Africans who were able to really get away from plantations and environments. Cross the Ohio River. The Ohio River is really a river. It is not just a stream to swim across, but being able to navigate across that, travel ultimately to now what is Route 42 in Ohio and through Southern Ohio, Southwest Ohio, but a university that was a staging site for people seeking freedom. So there is so much there around the history and then what that university is in its current day that helped me, but certainly serves to continue to help people as well.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And also the difference between survival and thriving. And I had a little moment there because, as you know, I went to a PWI, and that is a sense that we carried with us. I even have a trap recruiter. One of my mottos is "I will thrive." You know, I'm crossing out survive. Like I want to thrive, and thriving is the word for me for 2025. So I appreciate you mentioning that and bringing that up. And we do need to continue to talk about the importance of an HBCU.
Yes.
Unfortunately, an HBCU wasn't a possibility for me in terms of the financial aspect, not because they're not affordable, but because, this one school gave me more money, because they did have more money to provide to me. And it just made more sense that I go there. But, shout out to all the HBCU grads. As you know, I always lift them up. I think I have more HBCU grads on my show than anything else. But that's a testament to the Black excellence that comes out of those institutions. Absolutely. All right. We're going to shift again. Like I said, I got you talking about every part of the culture. Now we move into the religious aspect.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We both know that the Black church is deeply rooted in culture. Like, you went to Wilberforce. We know what's there. Yes. Deeply rooted in the culture, the community, and a collective spiritual experience. As your relationship with God is evolving, and you're exploring other faith traditions like Islam, what shared spiritual and communal experiences are you discovering that transcend those denominational boundaries while you're still honoring the unique cultural expressions of each tradition?
Yeah, so love this question and being able to talk about this topic. So grew up in a very traditional, Christian home, and I'm going to say Black Christian, because what we've normalized in American society is, do you go to a Black church or a white church? And the fact that church has been separated as if heaven will be separated. I just, again, as an adult, as I just kind of got older, it's something that reveals the toxicity of how flawed man is. And so for me, again, growing up very traditional, church on Sundays, my sisters are in the choir. My father was a trustee. I have a nephew who's a pastor. I have another nephew who was a minister. When I was planning my first trip to Egypt, there were people who asked me, are you concerned about traveling to a Muslim country? And I said, absolutely not. And the fact that people ask that question is because the religion of brown people has been villainized by so many, when we know Christians are the most destructive force on earth and have done so in the name of God. So that's just first. Like, that question should not be a question, whether or not going to a country where people look just like me, whether or not I would be safe. Secondarily, I talked about just all of my movement across the country. Again, I've moved across the country to places where I didn't know anybody by myself. It definitely changed my relationship with God because I had to trust him in a very different way. Like, I had no other safety net. Nobody was coming to save me. I needed to make good decisions. And if something happened, my faith was in God, that he would always keep me safe. And so traveling to Egypt the very first time, not so much in Cairo, but definitely when I arrived in Aswan, being able to hear the call to prayer. God is great. Come and worship him. And so Muslims pray 5 times a day. And when I thought about it more, we are so consumed with work, checking, social media multiple times a day, to actually position yourself to stop for 4 to 6 minutes, 5 times a day, and acknowledge God. God is great. Come and worship him. And when you think about what often gets positioned as conflict between Christians and Jews and Muslims, we all worship the same God. So how could you not support God is great, come and worship him? And so my goal had always to just be very respectful of the culture, but just in the past year, just finding myself just immersed in it and being welcomed into the Muslim community there in Egypt, but also here in California. And so I found a mosque, Chino Valley Islamic Center. Friday at lunchtime is a perfect time to end the week and being able to go. And one of the things I will tell you that I found very different, again, I grew up a church girl. I love a good choir. I good praise and worship. I love a good tambourine, and I know you have one, Kirsten.
I do, and I can't reach it because I'll have to reach over myself.
But I
want to beat it for you.
The piece that I have found that is very different than a Black Christian church is arriving at the mosque, the opportunity to come and just pray and center yourself, that we all sit on the floor. Nobody has saved a seat. That's not somebody else's pew. The sermon, and then the unifying prayer at the end. None of that feels foreign to me, having grown up as a Christian. And for me, it strips away some of the other things that I think have grown to be a distraction from just a pure worship and connection with God. And so I had often heard people of Islamic faith talk about Islam being a very peaceful religion. I didn't understood it until I had an opportunity to go worship. When you go and you were really in a room full of people who are all there for the same exact reason, it is restorative. And so I said, this transition, in between religions has not changed my relationship with God. I have just found a very different way that is much more fulfilling for me in my relationship with God.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's a deeply personal share. Mm-hmm. And I am guessing that it will help other people who are, maybe shy about or don't have the words to articulate mm-hmm. what they are also feeling or even what they're experiencing, but, are kind of shy to mention. I remember a time when the word is not shame, because my mother had us singing "We Are Not Ashamed." when we were 5 years old, and some of us wasn't saying it weren't even saying ashamed. I don't know what we were saying, but we had this instilled that we're not ashamed of being of loving God,
right.
of having a relationship with God. I've never been ashamed. I've never hid that, but I do think I've always compartmentalized it.
Yes.
And I've always said that this is the time that is for God, and these other time, and unfortunately, that's a very small time as opposed to how it should be. The structure that we should have. I directed the gospel choir in college, but again, that was a Thursday night thing.
Yes.
And a concert thing. Other days, me and my hood rat friends, some of them were in the choir. We doing wild stuff, we having a good time. But I feel that, as I have, put down those things and even shared my beliefs, my values, or how I interact, how I worship God with people even from other religions. I have very close friends who are Muslim, whose religion is Islam. They made it clear that that's what you say. My religion is Islam.
Yes.
They've invited me to iftars. I have a good time. I don't mind. And, we can talk about, those things. And like you said, there's a great deal of connection. There's a great deal of overlap. I have Jewish friends that, we talk about things, even Jesus,
Yes.
even Jesus,
Yes.
there's a great deal of overlap there. So I just appreciate, our Generation X, being a little bit more open and
Yes.
a little bit more authentic, and sharing not just our personal relationship, because everyone has a personal relationship with God, but giving people the space to have their
Yes.
relationship
Yes.
with
Yes.
God. I was telling the last guest before you, that was an episode that was more dedicated and grounded in the Black church, specifically the AME church. We were talking to one of the people that he mentioned was contemporary figure we should be following, was someone that I happened to come across on that PBS special about the Black church. And one of the things that she said was that, yes, you're saying that young people have left the actual church building, they've left the structures, but they have a relationship
Yes.
with God. So again, thank you for sharing something so deeply personal, and giving other people the courage and the the kick to say, this is how I'm going to do things, and this is how I'm going to worship.
Yeah. And if I could just add one more thing, I know
Absolutely.
we've talked about in just women's health,
Yeah.
fasting. So fasting isn't specific to Christianity or to Islam. Fasting is something that a lot of people do. We will hear, and I think Gen X women have been more vocal about menopause. I think it was always just a very silent topic or somewhat taboo. And so one of the things that you hear women in menopause talk about is weight gain. And I have told people, I'm like, I think my fat cells have separation anxiety. Like they refuse to leave my body. I have fasted as a Christian. Fasting during Ramadan was completely different for me. And I could not get over my plateau humps, or not just plateau, like my body was like, we shall not lose weight. This is not what we have to do. Learning to truly control your body and also be in tune with it. Fasting during Ramadan helped me completely obliterate this. My body has enough fat cells to sustain itself. Stop acting like you are about to die if you don't eat. And so it was this transition of being more in tune with, I can deny my flesh. I promise you I'm not going to die. I promise you I have enough fat cells to get me through the next 62 minutes. That helped me get over where I've heard a lot of women talk about, like, no, like this menopause weight gain is an insurmountable hurdle. I'm not giving medical advice. People should clearly go speak with their physician to talk about how menopause is affecting your body. But when I think about, as my cycle has slowed down and I'm feeling my body change, it was definitely fasting that allowed me to get control and actually make significant progress in getting back to a more healthy weight, which ultimately positively impacts my blood pressure as well.
Yes, and everything else in your life,
Yes.
you feel, when you feel better, you look better, you smile more, you have more energy, all that good stuff. Again, thank you for another share and shout out, from the Perry gang.
Yes.
Perry gang stand strong.
Gang, for real.
Sorry, y'all. Okay. Unfortunately, we come to the last question in the main section, but it's another great one. And I'm looking for some more jewels from you. You have a guiding principle: always up, always forward. And thinking about the theme for Trap Chat for the month, Trailblazing Footprints, Writing Black History Today, how do you see yourself fostering a legacy of resilience, empowerment, and innovation that propels future generations forward?
Yeah, so I always want to be a point of inspiration to my peers, and certainly to younger generation. Always up, always forward does not deny that there aren't challenges. what it says is do not stop. And regardless of where you are, there is always somewhere else to go or to be. And so, for me, in a very intentional way, I intend to live a long, healthy life. My great grandfather was 109 when he died. I am very intentional in my prayer that, God, I want to live a long, healthy life. I never want to be in a situation where I am frail and I require care from other people. I don't want to live a life where I become a burden to people. My great grandfather died in his sleep after being out in the field, for a full day. And I'm like, God, if you did it for him, you can also do it for me. And so, my always up, always forward. A lot of us understand branding and logos, but I sat in a very intentional way and said, when people see Kelton Legend, they see the crown as an icon, and they see this statement, always up, always forward. I wanted to inspire people to ask about my story, and not for me in a boastful way to share it, but in an inspirational way. But it also serves as a reminder for me. This is what I told the world about my company. I need to always show up and be exactly this, and not just the always up, always forward. I also have a quote that says, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? The two of those for me work in concert with each other, because I refuse to be a victim. I understand there are people who seek to victimize people who look like me because I'm a woman, for being Muslim, for being Black, whatever it is. But I will not go down without a fight. And so, for me, always up, always forward. It is the battle cry. It is the inspiration. It is the anchor. It is the umbrella. It is truly what keeps me moving.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kim. I didn't think I could, but I learned more about you in this little bit of time. Like, I didn't think it was possible, because we do, for those that don't know, like, we do have our little side conversations.
Yes, we do. We
A great
do.
deal of every one of our 30-minute meetings turns into
90 minutes,
a
94
little,
minutes.
little bit more.
Yes, yes.
All right, but it is time for the rapid fire.
Okay,
The Black History themed rapid
okay,
fire.
okay.
Please share
Mhm.
a cherished Black history memory or tradition that shaped your understanding and appreciation of Black history and culture.
I'll say I have to give two points. In elementary school, learning about Martin Luther King, but coming home listening to my parents talk about Martin Luther King, specifically my mother. So my mother was fortunate enough to be, a stay-at-home mom. The only job she had outside her house was working the polls at the election. So the elementary school that I attended was right around the corner from our house. My mother worked the election polls, well respected among her peers every year, because she understood the importance of voting. And so, for me, Black History Month is anchored to Martin Luther King and Black people having the right to vote, and not just having the right to vote, that you can work the election to make sure that everybody has the right to vote. I'll give you the kind of my book into that is Mae Jameson. She is my forever. I am like the fangirl of her. She is the only reason why I ever wanted to work for NASA. And so, for me, during Black History, I always find a way to acknowledge her, because smart, brilliant, beautiful, fearless, beyond capable, not a DEI hire. Like, you cannot be a mediocre astronaut. Like, if you are going to go and orbit the Earth, it's not for being average or mediocre. And so I just appreciate her, and I always find a way during Black History Month to acknowledge her.
Thank you for that. And I hope y'all caught that last part. Mm. Okay. Besides Mae Jameson,
Mhm.
what Black historical figure gives you a glimpse of yourself?
Oh, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
Um, I have watched so many videos of her speaking, and in such an unscripted way, She spoke profoundness from her soul. And it's one of the things that I have aspired to. If somebody said, come to my office and I need a presentation, and I haven't had time to prepare a PowerPoint, I don't have a notepad, I don't have an ink pen, can I speak about whatever I say I'm an expert in spontaneously from my soul? Fannie Lou Hamer is that role model for me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Um, we're going to stay there.
Okay.
Who's a lesser, but she's not lesser known, so we can't use her again. Who is
Mhm.
a lesser known historical or contemporary Black leader who inspires you and we should learn more about?
So not historical, I'm going to call her contemporary. Angela Rye. I have watched her on CNN. Um, like not be backed down by the ceremony of we're on TV and we should be dignified, journalists, blah blah blah. She holds true to who she is by profession and education, while also holding people accountable for a lot of times things that are racist, that are in an intentional way seek to marginalize people. And so when I think about like strong Black women, Angela Rye is definitely one that I feel like deserves more of a platform.
All right. And we all know who Angela is, who Angela Rye is. We shouldn't just get into a habit of calling people by their first names.
Yes.
I don't know her, so I don't have the right to be like, hey, Angela.
Right.
Apologies. I get it. It's Black History Month. We're going to be on our best behavior. Are there any books, film, or artwork related to Black history that you would uh, recommend to listeners who are seeking a deeper understanding of Black history?
Well, okay. So not necessarily Black history, I will say African inspired from the diaspora. There's a book, and it has two meanings for me. There's a book called Things Fall Apart, Nigerian author. And the title alone is what caught my attention, but then I started reading it. Well, it has a contemporary parallel. The Roots have an album called Things Fall Apart. And so the Black Thought talks of, he actually mentions it. There's a live concert of You Got Me, the song You Got Me, and he mentions Things Fall Apart. And so for me, I am always looking for authors, not that I don't also give attention to Black American authors, but I am always seeking African nation authors, because their lived experiences are so well beyond what we experience here in America. And I'll give you an example. Patrice Lumumba, if you're familiar with his story, I've followed several versions of documentaries about his life. And African authors tell stories about Black people and from a very specific vantage point. And so that book, Things Fall Apart, is the book that comes to mind for me.
And shout out, because I had to read that in core in undergrad. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they didn't play that. I was an international studies major, so
Okay.
that was one of the core books that we had to read.
It is literally right here. It is, I can, it's under my book. Well, I have Color of Law, Things Fall Apart, and then Cash. Those are the three books that are sitting right on top of my bookshelf.
Yes. Okay. How should individuals and communities actively, I'm using that word intentionally, actively participate in honoring and preserving Black history beyond February?
So you have to celebrate inclusion and presence every single day. And every single day, because sometimes the month of February can be fairly performative. And in the diversity work that I do, I use this reference, diversity mascot. And so when you think about athletics, the mascot comes out on game day, they hype everybody up, they run up and down the field. And then when the game is over, they take the costume off and they go back. I'm Black every single day, 24 hours, 24/7. And so you have to be committed to celebrating people not for their differences, but for just who they are and their identity. That word differences has a very othering impact to it. And so I try not to use it. Everybody is unique. Everybody has dominant traits. Everybody has things that they are subject matter experts in. And so when you think about the richness of American culture, specifically because the descendants of enslaved Africans are here, music, we think about music and entertainment a lot of times around celebrations, absolutely. But there are accolades in science and math, in education. There are so many different facets of who we are just in general as humans. And that's not specific to a race or an ethnicity. During the month of February, it is a time to elevate and amplify, but you should always be talking about people in this country who have helped make this country all that it is.
I love that. Thank you. All right. This is probably my least favorite subject at the moment because of all that's going on. But how do you think social media has influenced the documentation and the dissemination of Black history and culture?
Yeah. So probably maybe 20 years ago, Deion Sanders came to the church that I attended in Columbus. And he talked about that alcohol. And he said, alcohol makes you more of who you are. And I was like, social media does the same thing. And so I think social media amplified who we are as flawed individuals. It allows people, though, to operate in a very anonymous way because I can make up a whole identity of who I am not and spew things that I would never have the courage to say to someone in their face. And so the same way that social media can be used for good, it can and it is being used for evil. And so the same way, if I right now went and got a hammer, I could use it to, place a nail and hang a picture. I could also use it to assault my neighbor. That would be a very bad thing to do. And so I understand why society, we sometimes feel more led to villainize social media. My goal is to always use it and maximize it for all of the ways that I want to positively impact people. But it no doubt has allowed people to develop a level of bravado that is not rooted in reality.
Not rooted in reality. Yes. And the reality is I kick myself out of Trap Chat at least every other time. And I just did it, but thank you for keeping. I don't know why I do that. I'm so spastic. Zero coordination.
It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. What is your go-to songs, or music genre when you want to hype yourself up to conquer the day?
I'm definitely an R&B and hip hop girl. I am a forever fan of Mary J. Blige, and her song "Just Fine" is definitely my anthem. And so I look at how Mary J. Blige and her creative, especially her fashion team, evolved her from project to project. And that video, Just Fine, all of the different looks, her dancing, her mimicking like the Michael Jackson move was very unmarried, but at the same time married, because she reinvented herself every single time. And for me, it wasn't saying life is perfect. It's, you know what, this is my life and I own it, and I am going to do the best and the most that I can with it. So that is definitely I need to go walk. That's my song. Let me get my day started. That's my song. Let me burn off some calories. That's my song, because it's such an up-tempo song. But definitely Mary J. Blige, Just Fine is my, Kim the J anthem for sure.
That's someone else's too. I don't want to misquote them, but someone else from Trap Chat, that was their song. We actually sang it. So I like what I see when I'm looking at me, when I'm walking past the mirror.
Yes.
That's the breath control, because I couldn't even get it all out.
Yeah, I won't change my life. And I'm like, listen, this is the life that God gave me. I will do the most that I can with it.
I love it. Oh, that's a great segue to my next question.
Yes.
What's the best piece of career advice you've received that you would give your early career self?
Wow. So early in my career at Nationwide, I had a really, it was a very like bad thing happened. I was told I needed to cut my fingernails because they gave me a hey homegirl, what's up kind of feel. I was told this by a HR leader, like the talent acquisition director. You need to cut your fingernails because they give you a hey homegirl, what's up kind of feel. And I knew in that moment the universe had created a bright white line for me of you will be a slave or you will be a Black Panther. You got to choose right now. I chose Black Panther.
Clearly.
And so my question then was, why should I cut my fingernails? And it was, well, they could be distracting. So my question back was, if my breasts were large, would you also ask me to get a breast reduction because my breasts could be distracting? If I was in a wheelchair, would you be distracted by that? If I were Indian and I chose to wear the religious symbol and on my forehead, would you be distracted by that? So my fingernails are no more or less distracting than any other human characteristic. So I shall not cut my fingernails. And if this means that this promotional opportunity will be denied, I will clearly accept that denial. In these few weeks of going through this scenario, one of the ladies that I reached out to, who I had a lot of respect for at Nationwide, I asked her, I said, I feel like if I don't speak up for me now, other Black women will have to also face this same type of scenario. Is this really my what the universe is requiring of me to speak up? And she said, absolutely yes. And so again, it's one of the reasons why I use the statement, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And so it is simply speak up. Because if you accept wrong, victimhood, oppression, those people who in those positions believe that they have the power to wrong and oppress other people. You've normalized it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to ever normalize any person not just being able to live their life and be provided or have access to opportunities.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for speaking up. That happens more than you think. From the way that we dress to our vernacular,
Yes,
to how we express ourselves. We get to talking with our hands and you're being aggressive. Why are you mad? Why? What did I do? Yeah. Fingernails being distracted. Why is your style that way today?
Yeah, it was never my desire to be a compliant, tolerable slave. That was never my life. Never.
Whew, shout out to you. That's all. Let's move on. I'm starting to get mad again. you know I get mad. So let me, and then I start replaying those incidents in my head. My book gonna be good. Speaking of books, if you wrote a book describing your career so far, what would the title be?
Wow. I don't know. I've often joked about surviving corporate America and what each chapter might be. And so, but I don't want my life book to only be about work. You know what? So let me just say it this way. When I started my company, Jones is a fairly common name. And, you'll hear the term keeping up with the Joneses. I'm like, is this Jones Consulting? And I was like, no. Kelton is the name of the street that I grew up on. And one of the reasons why that's impactful for me, my family was the first Black family in our neighborhood. The house that my parents bought, my father bought it from the white man who was the developer for the neighborhood. He knew my father through the construction industry. And so when my parents bought the house, our family was the first Black family. The neighbors next door immediately put their house up for sale. And so my father called back to the old neighborhood, and the newbies then moved next to us. So when I started my company, I'm like, Kelton. I'm like, but it needs something else. Can't just be Kelton Consulting. And so it's like Kelton Legend. And so if I were going to write a book, it would definitely be the amplified version of Kelton Legend, because it's where I started. I played in the street. I, snow, raked leaves, all of our neighbors, everybody had a bunch of kids. It is so much of who I am because of the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so my life story would probably really be rooted in the story of Kelton.
I love it. I love it. Before we get out of here, can you
Mhm.
give us an idea of any upcoming projects or initiatives we should be on the lookout for? And also, please shout out where folks can follow you.
Yeah, so follow me definitely on LinkedIn. Kimberly Jones, clearly still a very uncommon name, but talent acquisition superhero. I am on Instagram as Kim the J. And why that's because, again, there are a million Kim Joneses in the world. The rapper Little Kim, we have the exact same name, Kimberly Denise Jones, first, middle, and last name. And you can also, for my travel business is Kim Tours Egypt. Relative to what I have coming up, so two things. I'm speaking at a conference, the HR Unplugged conference in April, but my big goal for 2025, I am hosting for the very first time. This is our inaugural event, Lessons in Leadership, the Egypt Experience. So it is a women in leadership conference that is built all on Egyptian principles. It's curriculum that I wrote as I've traveled back and forth about the importance of creating order, a leadership legacy, tapping into your team's natural gifts, and fearless leadership. And so more to come. You'll see that anybody who's following me or who chooses to follow me, you'll see that beginning March 1st. But I intend to take 35 women on an unforgettable journey to learn about leadership from a completely different vantage point. And my intention is to launch and relaunch everybody back home to show up and be a very different, more impactful, more dominant, more successful leader based on the things that my team and I will share with everybody during our 9-day conference.
That sounds amazing. And I cannot wait to get more details on that. And I will be following your journey. I encourage all of you to do so as well. Once again, please make sure you go and follow Kim on LinkedIn, Kimberly Jones. You can put in Kimberly Jones, PHR, PMP, Kimberly Jones, talent acquisition superhero. You will find her. Also visit her websites, www.keltonlegend.com. That's for talent acquisition consulting company, as well as Kim Tours Egypt for any of your travel needs specific to Egypt. Okay,
Yes.
don't call her asking her to book you a tour of Germany. Like, that's not where she's going. People, okay.
we are all things which people started asking me, and I'm like, I am Kim and Kemet. That is
Oh,
Kemet
okay.
is the ancient original name of Egypt, and so I am Kim and Kemet. If your intention is to go to Kemet, I am the person most certainly that you should partner with and allow me to plan your experience.
Absolutely. Do all of those things and then
Yeah.
make sure you come back for the remainder of Trap Chat Presents Black History Month,
Yes.
Trailblazing Footprints, Writing Black History Today. Thank you,
Shout out to
Kim.
you for providing this platform and this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.